My name is David E. Kirkland, the Executive Director of the NYU Metropolitan Center for Research on Equity and the Transformation of Schools, where I also serve as Professor of Urban Education. Today I want to talk about critical race theory. There's been a lot of conversation about what is critical race theory, the idea of banning critical race theory from our schools, and many of us don't understand what it is. First, let me just say, it's not really a theory. It's a set of theories, a set of ideas, a set of concepts that allow us to look at and examine race in schooling. It's not taught in K-12 public schools, but it was introduced in the late 1970s, early 1980s into law school and by Gloria Latson-Billings in education as a way to examine systems and the legacy of racism within those systems. From critical race theory, we know some things. We know that our babies aren't broken, but too often the systems that we send them to are. We also know that if we want to achieve different outcomes, if we want better outcomes for Black and brown and other racially vulnerable students, we have to examine the question of race, because the question of race sits at the center of every disparity, every racial disparity that we see in education. So what does that mean for us? Well, it means elegant and beautiful concepts that come from critical race theory, right? Like the idea that systemic racism is real, that systems can be designed to privilege some and to marginalize or disadvantage others on the basis of this skin color. We also know that those systems of vulnerability, those systems of oppression, they intersect at other points of identity. So race and gender on top of ability, on top of age, and other systems of power as they intersect intensify, right? The kinds of oppressions that we see within society, within institutions. We also know that counter narratives are available. This is what Chimamanda Adichie talks about when she talks about the danger of the single story, when she talks about stereotypes. She says the problem with stereotypes is not that they are, inaccurate, it's that they are incomplete. That so often we gravitate to some dominant narrative, that there is one story that projects out. There's an African proverb that says, until the lion learns to write history, the story of the jungle will forever glorify its hunter. Imagine never having your story told, or having your story told by someone who does not look like you, who did not experience what you experienced, and that story becoming your story. Critical race theory, it says that we need multiple stories. We need counter narratives, right? To interrupt the master narrative that typically creates this normalization of oppression for certain people, right? That gives us this narrative of white supremacy that bumps up against this other narrative of anti-Blackness or other forms of inferiority or systems of inferiority that get ladled onto the bodies of people of color. It also gives us the idea of interest conversions, which is a critique, not a strategy. The critique is that when there are gains that are made, and there have been gains made for Black, brown, and other racially vulnerable people, that those gains are often only, in association or in relation to gains that white people have. In a sense, it says that, we can't do much of anything for anybody unless it serves those who are in a dominant identity position. Critique. And it's given us a lot of other elegant concepts that can help us reimagine our world, that can help us reimagine how we do schooling. I've worked in school and I've worked on school transformation for years. Many of you know my story. Grew up in Detroit, was a city kid who wasn't supposed to make it. And I get to be here because there are sets of individuals who looked at those institutions and said they're not well designed for the young people they serve. And the question becomes, how can we look at those systems? How can we examine the roots of their problems in order to construct a system or set of environments that are responsive to the needs of people like me? Critical race theory is one of the lenses that we can use in order to push us forward instead of pulling us back.